Hey everybody, welcome to our first ever DEAP State conversation roundtable discussion. A little background on why we're doing this. First of all, my beautiful panelists here, Lululemon ambassadors from all around the DFW Metroplex. We thought it was important to get together and not work out, but actually have conversations that go beyond just the workout. So a lot of what you're going to hear today are our thoughts about things that integrate into not just fitness, but other parts of it, right? When we're talking about wellness, is it enough just to talk about the workout? Is it even enough just to talk about nutrition and sleep? But there's so many other facets to wellness that I think we should touch upon. And we are all in a unique position to take our platform and use it for a purpose other than just working out. Trust me, working out is super important. I love it. We love it. We encourage you to do it as much as you can. But there has to be another conversation beyond the mat or beyond the studio, right? So that's what the DEAP State is. Now, first, I want to thank Lululemon first. I mean, I was pinching myself driving up here. I was like, how do we get away setting this up in a store 2 hours before they're going to open? I was like, it's absolutely crazy. And so from my heart to you guys, like, this is like an absolute amazing, it's like a dream come true. Like, I didn't even think this was a bucket list item till it actually started happening. And we were planning this about a year ago. And, you know, me and my fellow ambassadors here at NorthPark, it's just been so amazing just to actually see it come to life. So many people have had their hands in this that we are just so thankful. And we're thankful for you guys for being here to participate and watch and listen to us talk about whatever we're going to talk about. I want to thank my crew over here. This team, they came in here. We're here till like midnight last night setting up. Yeah, eating granola bars, drinking Celsius, whatever we're doing. I'd like to introduce the panelists first. This is Jazz Kirk. So Jazz and I are both run ambassadors, but I have been hanging out with Jazz and talking to Jazz about so much about mental health in the last season that she is an incredible person in the topic of mental health and wellness. I've learned so much from Jazz. I'm going to pass it to her and let her introduce herself to you guys.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thank you for that, Dean. I am the founder of Honeydew, which is a mental wellness lifestyle brand. It is in the beginning stages. We've raised over $200,000 for awareness for mental health and well-being. And I look at that from a more of a lifestyle space versus just like therapy or, like you said, on the mat. It's like, how do we get in life and do? So Honeydew means you're strong, gifted, and talented. And when you say the word, you are saying an affirmation back to yourself.
This is David Bora. He's quickly become someone that I get to work with all the time. You know, my crew and I, we get to work with his foundation, Adaptive Training Foundation, and we've really kind of integrated into their culture. This man has a fabulous and amazing, deep story that he's reached all crevices of the earth and will probably reach more just to bring all that into his work and into the population that he serves. But David Bora.
Thanks, Dean. Yeah, I'm a retired NFL linebacker, and one day I met a guy that got blown up, lost all 4 limbs. I walked up to that man, challenged him to exercise with me. He took a chance on me. I realized there's a huge void for people, you know, post-trauma, not just veterans, but, you know, people missing limbs, people with spinal cord injuries, neurological diseases, like life happens. And so I created a nonprofit where we bring people in from all over the world, totally cost-free. We train them mentally, physically, take them through this 9-week progression. And then after we've trained them to really defy the impossible, they go out and they have a adaptive ski trip or surf trip or climb trip, mountain biking. So we really galvanize those relationships. And the biggest thing today that I'm going to focus on is, you know, in the same mental health vein, but even more is more think mindset. And, you know, when you work with a lot of people that have kind of identified as broken, right, they kind of start to buy into that. I think if you treat someone broken, they'll act that way. If you look someone in their eyes and treat them like a whole person, that person shows up. But one consistent factor is that little voice in our head, that voice that doesn't pay rent, that sometimes we listen to more than maybe we should. And my thing is the sweat psychology of exercise. How do we use moving our body to get that voice to get a little bit louder inside? Then how do we develop a relationship with that voice to which we can use it, it doesn't use us? We're going to talk more about that in a little bit.
Woo, he's getting right into it. Gosh, we could have just jumped. See? Gosh, you guys paid for a good one. Right here. And then we got Paige Martindale. Paige and I, man, we go way back, Paige. I don't know if you even know, like compete every day, back days, and then my old CrossFit days, and then, you know, obviously with training and everything, and then, you know, we go to church together and everything. So Paige and then we just kind of, our lives have meandered back into Lululemon. So it's been an incredible journey that I hope we don't end here. We just keep going. But Paige, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Paige Martindale, and I'm the co-owner of Class Studios. So I have a fitness studio brand. We have 2 studios here in Dallas, but even past the studios, I just identify myself as a connector. I feel like I was literally made to connect the people that I love around me. Hence, when they asked me to come back into Lululemon ambassadorship, they did mention Dean, Emily, and Antoine were going to be on, and I was like, I have to be there. So speaking of seasons with Dean, it's been really beautiful to have so many with you. And number one, I want to thank you so much for everything you've done for this. Like, wow. So that's just a little bit about me, but I'm going to focus on what it looks like to be in your body, but also be in community, because that's my mantra. That's who I am. So.
And then we got Emily Ortiz. If I could like come back and be another person with another vibe, I'm not even kidding. It would be Emily. She doesn't know that. But I would come back as Emily. No, for real. I mean, her overall style, the New Balances, the look.
Coming from you, that means a lot.
And honestly, her level of soulfulness, I wish I could walk into a room and just chill, you know, and she is such an observer. She is such an intellect in that I'm just, you know, in all of what you do. And I'll let her introduce herself to you, but this will be me in like 200 years right here.
Wow, thank you for that introduction. I'm Emily Ortiz. I've been in the yoga and meditation space in Dallas for coming up on 6 years, I think. I'm also the director of wellness at Le Soul, and we really focus on healing from a very restorative place. So we don't do anything crazy like y'all do over there, but very, very restorative, and we're very community-based as well. And I'm just really grateful to be here. I mean, thank you so much. All of this wouldn't have happened without Dean, and this really is his dream, and we're like along for the ride. So
Our dream.
But he did so much. So thank you. Thank you for this.
So much. Appreciate that. And then we got Antoine Howard. Antoine, do you remember our phone call during the pandemic? Do you remember it? Yeah.
No, I don't.
We chatted on the phone during the pandemic.
Okay.
And we were going over, because you called about possibly doing like photos and videos and stuff. And then now you have grown so far, and we're intertwined again. And we are doing photos and video together. There we go.
Definitely doing photos.
Our pandemic dream has come true right
Yes,
there.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Antoine.
You know, it's funny because I think the first time I saw you, I was like, who is this guy? He was doing CrossFit. And I started doing my research on Dallas instructors. And every time I came across Dean, they talked about how authentic and good he was. And that stands so true. The guy's an absolute angel. And of course, you know, Jazz and Paige and Emily. How do you not be pleasured to be amongst these guys? And I met David in a matter of, besides his smell, in a matter of 10 seconds. I was like, is this guy even walking? I think he's flying and floating in the studio. Oh my God, he's handsome. All right, but look, so...
he smells great.
Yeah, he smells great. Yeah, so my name is Antoine Howard. I own I Am Lifted Studios in Dallas Design District. And I say to you that who you are, why you are, matters. And that's what the intention of my studio is fitness, in my opinion, is easy. But something about you in the process of moving and movement to dictate how you see and experience life. David said something that I felt was like, wow, I needed to hear that. He says, very simply, life happens. But what's happening to you while it's happening? We don't see life as an opportunity. We can easily be conditioned by the oppositions we encounter and let that become our identity. But what's happening when life is happening to you?
See, you're in for a ride, guys. These guys up here are amazing. Antoine, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you guys. For real, everybody, you have a card in front of you or underneath you if you didn't see it. It It's attached to your bum now. But there are notes on the back for 4 what we call spheres that we're going to try to cover today. And that's mind, body, soul, and integration. And we're going to go through each of these topics. We'd love for you guys to take notes if you have notes, or even some takeaways and some goals for yourselves to just write down that. So feel free to fill that card up. If you are like a serial note taker, we have plenty of extra cards. You might take another stack home with you. But we feel like these spheres are really important to talk about because they don't just overlap, but oftentimes they merge together. You might be in a season of life where maybe your soul part of your life is not the most important because you're working on some other things that have taken you away from that. And I think that's totally okay. I think it's okay to give yourself permission to see, hey, nothing's ever going to be in complete balance. This is going to be kind of an ebb and flow, a tide, so to speak. And it's okay to be aware of that. I think being aware of the different spheres in your life is probably even more important than having them all neatly balanced and tucked away. So we're going to start with this concept of mind, and mind is to us is not quite mental health yet, but it's really mindset. It's saying, what do I want to accomplish? What are some goals of mine? What are some thought processes I might have, and how do I achieve those? And so I want to ask Dave first. Dave is one of those guys that when he puts his mind to something, he's going to accomplish it. And for his work with the Adaptive Training Foundation, it's really important that he communicates that message because he works with a lot of folks that have suffered some trauma that would render themselves, quote unquote, broken. And that's a hard mindset to get out of. So Dave, I'd love to hear a little bit about personally, how do you set your mindset, really? How do you establish a goal and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do to accomplish it? And what does that look like beyond? Are there rituals? Are there certain templates that you bring in from other problem-solving situations? How do you set your mind?
I think it starts with choosing to take intentional, difficult things on. I think that could look so different for different people. You know, I played linebacker in the NFL. I never ran farther than catch that guy with the ball, right? And then during COVID, was like, I'm going to go run 10 miles and see if I die or not. I didn't die. And then the next weekend I ran a marathon. And then 6 weeks later, I ran 100 miles in under 24 hours. It was like 9 minutes to spare. And I peed blood for a couple of days. And my wife called me an idiot, which I was. I had no idea what I was doing. But what unearthed in me was this calm when everything was red alarms. And I realized, I'm like, wait a second, if I can sit into that discomfort, I'm pretty prepared for whatever life throws at me. You know, life provides the curriculum. You don't have to look for difficulty. It's going to show up. And so I think that when you have a clear line in the sand that it's all for you, that there's this need to grow and welcome. I mean, when I played football, at one point, one of our linebackers' wives got me into a Zumba class and talk about alternate types of training. I was so uncomfortable, you know, but it freed me up, and it freed me, if nothing else, it gave me the opportunity to laugh at myself and be okay with that too. And that to me is checking the mental box in a way that continues to grow you beyond the version of you that got you to here, but won't get you to there. So the upgrading of the ego is often the personalization with the difficulty. When you make it personal, when you make this narrative around it and you find people to affirm more of that suffering, all you're doing is just drinking more of your own poison. So when I commit to something difficult, I go to those closest to me and I say, this is what I'm going to do. You know, and they're like, what? And most of those, like my wife, she always says she knows who she married. Because I can try to be smart, but I can't be safe. And so when I then put it out, I speak it into existence, then it's up on the wall. And then I have to, you know, backfill to make the plan to get there. And I think that's the same thing I'm trying to encourage our athletes, which is the only disability is a fixed mindset. If you have a growth mindset, then you step into the furnace and you welcome the fact that this is part of the qualifying factors. Don't wait to feel ready. Step off into that abyss and then be able to rise up, recognizing that there's going to be people that are going to come along the path, and they're going to be the ones to help elevate you on that part of the journey too. The other thing I'll say, last thing into this note is, you know, lots of times those that love you and they're closest to you will stymie this process. And that's a slippery slope, right? Like, because what they're seeing is you're threatening the version that they need or that they know. And I think that oftentimes we concede the trajectory that we're on to then, you know, lower our frequency. you're going to encourage people to elevate through this process. You don't have to concede anything to come down. And you might be amazed that sometimes things fall apart to fall together for greater things. And that's part of this evolution of life. Like, what a terrible compliment to meet somebody and be like, you're the exact same. I haven't seen you in 5 years. That'd be a horrible compliment, right? We should evolve. And that's why I use the mind as a muscle that needs to be flexed, that needs to be fired. And I need to throw, a wide amount of experiments at it to do that.
That's really interesting, because you mentioned the people that are closest to you would stymie your progress because they want this current version or the old version. And this is interesting because, Antoine, I want to ask you about this, because you integrate this mindset principle into your athlete and your client pool so well that it's almost like what Dave's saying is, if you want to grow, other people will be a little threatened by that growth. But if you show them what that progress is, you're almost bringing them, so you're almost challenging the people closest to you that, hey, get scared, but then come with me. Like, the bus is going, just get on, let's go, right? So Antoine, how do you help people not only achieve goals, but celebrate progress? Or, what is it about what you're saying to your athletes that allows them to be uncomfortable around others, see their progress, and then want to jump on that same bus?
So can I just listen to him the whole time? Is that a thing? This is my first time.
Yes, we got a life.
I like it.
We have a Life After Dave Bora podcast coming out in February.
Trust me, I subscribed. I'm on it. I'm on it.
Okay, we got a first subscriber.
He said a word. He said discomfort. All right. One thing I'll say I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old. My son is 21. My daughter is 17. I'm learning as a girl dad, the simplest way I can say something to my daughter is just learn, just listen, just learn and listen. Baby, just learn and listen. Life is ready for you. Be ready for it. So, and I gave this to her a year ago, and it's something that's on her mirror in her bedroom. But I said, right past the this is comfort, the doubt, the insecurity, and the self-sabotage. You just got to stay with it. Don't give up. And one thing I say to my members, if you can, you will. I guarantee you, if you set your mind and intentions on something you want to achieve, nothing stops you. Even if you made an excuse why you were getting it done, even if you stopped while you were getting it done, your intentions were dialed in on making that happen. So now the expectation and the requirement is, how committed are you to what you said you wanted to achieve? Now that's a whole different conversation. Because if that's your passion and your purpose and your actions align with that, then why wouldn't it happen? See, it's easy for us to set a goal based off of how we feel. But when you find that your feelings are only one indication and that your faith and the facts matter, it's easy to set a goal, but what are the faith and the facts towards that goal? I want to lose 10 pounds, but your lifestyle doesn't support that. And it's okay for you to say the facts are, my lifestyle doesn't support this. And also, I've never achieved it, so how do I believe past how I feel? So you can. It's just about you setting a realistic intention with yourself and a goal that you can say, I can achieve this if I just stay devoted to the process.
Antoine, to go back to, what you're describing, how do you do that on a mass scale? Like, what you just said, how do you bottle that up? And then how and when do you give that to somebody?
So I think as leaders, I say to you very openly that there's strength and vulnerability. And it's something to lead with integrity, right? You got to also keep in mind, too, if you're the person that someone is leaning on, they see something in you. And for you to say that I need someone to lean on means that you see you in you. And it's okay. And there's a lot of people who play in this victim mode, and they don't allow themselves to really learn through whatever the process may be. It's just, this happened. So I was raised in church, right? I believe everybody believes in something. I know Dean has a great way of explaining it, and I love the way he explains it. Because something I always say is I never debate with someone's religious beliefs. Religion is a relationship. That's personal. That's your business. But the believing component, I truly believe that you have the ability and capability to do something special if you put your mind towards something. There's this thing, the reason I reference to that is, in the Bible it said Jesus told parables, stories, to make things clear. So in the world we're in, I guess to make it simple, it's the flea paradigm. Have you heard of the flea paradigm before? So the flea, A flea, again, if you look up the paradigm, says can jump anywhere from 2 to 4 feet just by its basic anatomy, a flea. You put it down. But when you put a flea in a jar and you close the lid, the flea conditions itself to only jump as far as the lid goes. And if there was anything, if the flea learned in that space and it had kids or friends in that space and you took the top off, it would only go as far as what it was conditioned to believe. So that's a lot of us. So are your conditions controlling your circumstances? What are your conditions? Are you aware of those conditions? It's easy to say this is that because of this, but who are you in that process? And it's sometimes our job, and it's this level of awareness that I try to get from my community, that I need you to understand that wherever you are, you're still there. And there's something right there for you. Don't get past this, worrying about that, or reliving what you experienced. What is it right now that you can live and grow through right now?
Man, I love that. That's like that flea analogy reminds me of, I guess, the same story where if you have an elephant that grew up chained to a circus post, right? Once they get older and that chain is removed, they still stick around right by that post because that's comfort to them at that point. Even though that was a trap to an extent, I think you're right. We do all lay victim to our traps that we set from time to time. I want to kind of jump over to Jazz real quick. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this with Honeydew. And, you know, we're talking about mind here, but there is a component of mental health that, you know, we'll bring up in soul a little bit. But how important is it that you are also setting realistic goals based on where your mental health is? Because if you're not in a place where certain goals seem even reasonable because you're working on your mental health, how important is it to almost identify like, hey, I might simply not be in the mood to do this goal. Maybe I need to set my expectations elsewhere. So how important is it that mental health plays in goal setting?
Coming off of these two, I think that you have to be gentle with yourself. Like when you're setting a goal, I think we a lot of times look at the biggest one and it's honestly the smallest one that really, really matters, because that compounded over time becomes like such a mastery. You choosing to drink water daily is so much more powerful than you forcing yourself to tell yourself, I need to lose weight. Like it becomes habits, it becomes principles, it becomes laws. So for me, my mental health, my mental state always begins with a gentleness. It's never me like, you need to be. When it comes to my physical body, my physical looks, I'm like, I got to look at me and love me. If it's the weight, if it's the hair, if it's whatever it is, you got to look at you. And that's why I say it's a gentleness. Like the mind will play and loop as much as it can because it's like it's a free for all, but you have to just be like, man, let me just be present here. And what can I do right now? And I think all of us have had moments where you're like, it's hard to get out of the bed because you know you're dealing with something, but guess what? Can you make the bed? Can you take a shower? Can you just take those little steps and then you muscle up the courage? And then, like you said, it's all those little things that begin to conspire to be like, the sun comes in. Like it's supposed to be a rainy day and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, or you're drinking some coffee. It's in those little moments. So for me, my mental health is like all about gentleness and grace and like reminding myself that on such a consistent basis. Even none of us are exempt from anxiety, depression, any of that stuff. So
That is so good. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing, Jazz, spot on, especially when we're hard chargers. Like, I'm going to be the best at mental health. Yeah. You know, like, I'm going to be so good. Like, and I guess I'll say this, just add on. It's like mental health has no destination. You don't suddenly arrive, right? If we're all, and I think in our, certainly Western kind of culture, it's like, man, if I could just get to there, right, then I'm good. Right? Like, nah, that's not how it works, right? That's a trap, right? If it is losing the 10 pounds, like, if I lose the 10 pounds, I'm happy, right? Mentally, I'm better. Nah, like, what is the process? What is the journey as the weight's coming off, as you're drinking water, as you're being kinder to yourself? And I think that's the piece where, again, people, and I love that mental health is being spoke about more than ever, but don't make it the, like, convenient, I'm going to be just vulnerable enough, but not engaged enough to be accountable to the actions, as little as they may be. And again, if you identify 3 things in your control to do on a daily basis and you do 2 of them, you're probably set up for a pretty good day. Right. And then if you do that for a week, you're probably set up for a good week, and then a month. And so we realize that these things are in our control. And I'd also say this, I know this is just speaking to me. When I'm mentally well, it's when I'm serving people. Like, it's when I choose to realize my gifts match somebody's needs. And it may just be holding a door and looking somebody in their eye. It may be encouraging somebody before that last set, or maybe answering the phone call when that person had some, really huge catastrophe happen. But don't make mental health this conveniently out of your reach. Like, you're just like the beach ball in the pool. Every time you reach for it, it goes a little further because you're not okay being where you are right now.
That is so good. And, it's interesting because you talk about 2 out of 3, right? As a parent, I always chuckle because, and a lot of us up here are parents, kids have 3 big things that they really worry about, right? Did I get my things? Did I get to eat? And then do I get to sleep? And so if you make it that simple, and one of those things is removed from a child, that's a third of their life, right? Think about how many things we have. We got 1 million a day. We don't just have 3. But if we were somehow able to distill what both Dave and Jazz are saying, hey, take those big, 100 different complexes into maybe 3 big goals for the day. Did I get to move? Did I eat well? Did I sleep? And if you can accomplish those simple things versus saying, well, did I move, but for 90 minutes with heavy weights and then with a treadmill in between, right? Did I eat, but was it, did I hit my macros? Was it keto? Was it, all this stuff. But if you make it big blobs like kids do, I think you end up achieving, quote unquote, because there is a part of us that we all still want to achieve. I think the progress is great, but there is still kind of there's a scorecard. I see people do this with their Apple Watch every hour because they got to get their stand hour because they want to get credit. I get it. I'm there. But yeah, it's so great. Distill it into smaller goals that you can attain. Speaking of physical though, because this is January, there is a lot of physicality. There are people making these resolutions and, coming out of the Christmas or the holiday season, there's a lot of physical needs here. And I am very interested to hear from Paige on this concept of the next sphere that we're going to talk about, which is body. Because Paige runs a studio that has so many different types of movement modalities, and people are encouraged to do all of them. You can ask my wife. She's up part of the Badass Challenge right now, and she's like, baby, I got to go to the 7:30 stretch. I'm sorry. I can't do dinner. You're doing dinner. I'm like, okay, no problem. Do your thing. Wow. She's got to get the sticker. So again, as we're... got to get it. I think they get a windbreaker this year. It's pretty awesome. Okay. So as we're talking about progress and giving ourselves permission, there's still a physical component to this. How do you guys, and you in particular at Class Studio, how do you promote physical wellness through diversity and movement practices and really honestly let people feel healthy about their choices, even though they might on a staunch strength coach say, well, you're not sticking to a rigid strength program. You're never going to see gains because now you're doing this and that. And at some point, it's like, what does it matter, right? So how do you guys tread that fine line? How do you guys handle that?
So we're coming up on 6 years as a business in February next month. That's crazy. But when we opened our doors, we knew we'd be cross training. Me and my business partner, our discipline was always indoor cycle. So to the beat of the music, it's like a club, we're having an endorphin high through and through, but we knew that we needed other disciplines because that's how we were going to stay most rounded out. And then we opened up our second studio, added more disciplines, and we're on this journey of you can't just train in one way, but it's not just your body, it's your heart, it's your mind, it's all the things that we're talking about. So in Class's inception, we already knew we wanted to challenge everyone to move in different ways, but also to link arms with people around them. So the absolute core of who we are, it's based in community. And so when you're training in different ways and you're linking arms with people around you, yes, we're about the physical, but we are so about the heart and the mind as well. And I would just say that the pandemic even shifted us. We had 4 high intensity concepts: cycle, train, tread, and heated Pilates sculpt. But in 2020, I was changing as a leader, and I brought on yoga, which is our flow concept, and then restore-based meditation and sound bath classes, which Emily helped me steward and lead at the studios. And wow, it has changed the game. Allowing people to come in, to lay down on their yoga mat, and maybe that's their movement, is just a light stretch and meditation for the day. And I'm just seeing all of these hearts open in a new way, bodies be challenged, but also minds. I'm looking at some of my instructors right now, and it's just been the most beautiful journey I've ever been on, because we also get to be students of each other as instructors, students of our clients, teachers to our clients. It's this truly beautiful cycle.
I love how you mentioned the integration of yoga and the sound bath with Emily, because I was going to ask Emily this while you were talking. Is movement only limited to your musculature or your body? Can you move in your mind and in your soul? Is that also considered a movement practice? Just because I didn't get 10,000 steps today, but what if I made some progress here and here, right? Is that still, can I check the box for movement? Would I still get credit for movement? So Emily, I would love for you to talk about that a little bit in the standpoint of how do you try to communicate to the people that come to your classes that, hey, this is just as important part of movement, that we're doing something in our soul, that we're doing something in our mind, than when we're just, lifting weights, running, doing whatever we're doing burpees until, we're blue in the face. So is an acceptable form of movement if your soul is moving? We're getting real deep, guys.
The short answer is yes, of course. I tend to lean more with jazz, where being gentle, I think, is really important. And I think a lot of us aren't as gentle with ourselves, especially in the new year. I think everyone just really tries to hit the ground running. They try to pick up all these different really high intensity, workouts or practices. And I have found that sometimes the hardest thing for people to do is be still. And, you can be, I've worked with extremely in shape, fit, strong people, and they have the hardest time just being still for 45 minutes, And so I think if you aren't checking in with you, what is the point of all of it, right? I have a teacher, he always says a little bit is better than nothing. And I think that's something that we all need to kind of absorb, is even if I'm just going on a 10-minute walk or doing a 10-minute yoga class or a 5-minute meditation, that little bit of practice is better than not doing anything at all. Because I think a lot of people just throw in the towel and they're like, well, I'm not doing my high intensity 60-minute cycle class today, so I'm just not going to do anything at all. And at the end of the day, I think that's more harmful than not. Yeah.
Jazz, go ahead.
We're doing a little dance. To piggyback off of Paige and Emily, I think what we're hearing is evolve and allow yourself to evolve. Even with you bringing on different disciplines, it's you guys realize there will be seasons you're going to love cycle. And even for myself with run, there are seasons that I'm of course I love running, but then there are seasons that I'm this is so much more tough. And I want to take time, and then I give myself that time, and it becomes in the stillness that I'm I maybe don't like that right now, and that's okay. That doesn't mean I don't still associate as a runner. That doesn't mean I still am not this version of myself. It just means right now, stillness and me being present, 100% present, and in this discomfort is where I need to show up. And it's that movement is still being still is probably the hardest thing to do. And when you find yourself still, get stiller. And then when you're there, get even more still. And then that's where everything comes up that you're I hate this. And that's when you got to have that aha, something will come from that. So when it comes to movement, try stuff. I know people who hate running, and I'm well, don't do it. Don't tell your body you hate something and then go do it. It's not you're not gonna get anywhere. Just I think Antoine and David have said, if you tell your mind you can do it, your mind's bet. Your body's follow through. But if you say, I hate it, it's like, it's the most brutal, uncomfortable thing ever. And the whole time you're like, how many minutes have gone by? How many this versus like switching it up and saying, this version of me just needs like maybe 20 minutes. I hate weights. I'll get in the gym for 20 minutes and I swear it is the best thing for me. I'm like, okay, you did your little thing. You did your little biceps. You go, girl. But at Pilates, you're going to have a blast. Running, you're going to have a blast this time. So just remember that, like, you're not stuck to one thing. You may have identified with that last year. Try something different so you know. If you try it and you don't like it, you just learn that's not for me.
So to add to that, I'm a person who thinks that busyness is addictive, but then you find out that you're hiding behind the busyness and that stillness. I wrote this down in my notes a few weeks ago, but the stillness causes me to be aware, and busyness is forcing me away from awareness. I just need to feel like I'm accomplishing something, but I'm not really addressing whatever the issues may be, and that's why I think that busyness is the way to go. And then I wrote later in the day that awareness is just one aspect of it. The next step is acceptance. What do I need to do now that I know? And that's where people find a way to make excuses. If you have to sit still, accept acknowledge and be aware of the thoughts that are happening, and then what changes can I make? Again, as Paige said earlier, what can you do? As simple as it is, what can you do once you're now aware and you move towards the next step of acceptance?
This is so good. This conversation about stillness and this conversation about awareness, I think you're right. I think there's a lot that gets revealed when we stop. My wife calls it fiddle farting around. That's what I do all the time. She's like, if you don't even know what you're doing. You're just milling around. And it is. I think it's a of our society. It's a product of feeling like we have to be in this rat race. But what's interesting though is, Emily, you were a collegiate athlete, right? So if we would have had this conversation like 6-7 years ago, it would have been very different. Your response would have been very different. Talk a little bit about your collegiate past, and I'd love to hear from some other past collegiate and professional athletes. How do you get from a point where that is your life, like you're supposed to be working on something all the time, to where you are now in your practice at La Salle, where you are preaching stillness, you're preaching mindfulness. Talk a little bit about that transition.
Oh gosh. So yeah, I was a college volleyball player, and after our last season, I got out of the season as a senior, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, what do I do? Now I'm working out for me? Like, oh, okay. Because, when you're working out, you're like, okay, like I'm working for a goal, right? Like I'm working for, to be stronger so that I can win. And I was very, very, very competitive. And so I kind of went into like this depression a little bit of just like, I don't know what I want to do. Like I like working out. And I had been doing yoga, basically kind of my whole life, but more once again for like the health benefits of it and for my performance. So I got into it more, and then I realized like, oh shit, like sitting with myself and being still with myself is really difficult right now. And I don't necessarily right at that moment like what is going on in my mind. And so the more, once again, going back to this word, discomfort, being uncomfortable, it's hard to sit with your thoughts. It's hard to listen to your anxieties that may come up. It's hard to even maybe think of past memories or traumas or whatever you want to call it. But the more you do it, it doesn't get easier, but more stuff just kind of gets uncovered. And then you start to get deeper within yourself of like, oh, okay, maybe I am going to cycle or going to lift or whatever, not because necessarily I want to lose 100 pounds or whatever, but more so just because that's what's helping me connect with the depth of me, the depth of my soul. And that's kind of where my movement practice started becoming more for connecting with my higher self, or even, God, whatever you want to call it. It's a way to connect with something greater than myself. And I think a lot of us get super attached to results of like, I need to lift this much weight. I need to look like this. I need to, lose 50 pounds. But like you were saying, it's like when that happens, then what? You're just going to stop? Or you're just going to stop, lifting? Or you're just going to stop doing yoga, meditating, whatever it may be? There has to be something deeper to hold you to your practices. And I practiced Ashtanga yoga for a few years, and every morning, before you practice, you basically surrender to something greater than yourself, and you devote that practice. You have a devotion of like, this is for myself, but this is also for something greater than myself as well. And it's really hard to be a shitty person when you are waking up and devoting your practice to something greater than yourself, and then you leave that room, and it's you think about things more. You think about the way you're driving, or the way you're talking to people, or the way you're in relationship with other people. So for me, that's how my physical movement changed a lot after college, because it's hard. It's hard going from a collegiate athlete to just a normal person. Yeah. Yeah.
To kind of dovetail from you, I transitioning out of the league, I was severely addicted to opiates. I was spending a couple grand a week just to not go into drug withdrawal. So I went through a 7-day detox, lost 34 pounds, couldn't control either end. One night 3, I actually came to and wanted to try to eat some food to sort of see if I could nourish myself. And I went to pick up this plate to take it to the microwave, and I couldn't even stand. It fell, shattered. The nurses rushed in, and I'm apologizing because I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed. And they actually restrained me. They thought I was going to try to use the broken plate to slit my wrists. Now, keep in mind, just months previous, I was running down the field for the Seattle Seahawks, right? So, like, how did I get here? And the truth was, it's ego. And it was ego because, like, my greatest attributes used to nauseam became my greatest weaknesses. And that at that point in my life, the armor that I put on was football. It was the applause of others, the outward approval. I was a human doer, not a human being. And I needed that because that was how I was known for what I did. My worth was tethered to what I outwardly achieved. And so the opportunity to get, through rehab and to get clean, to get sober, and the opportunity to get still was so critical for me to see what remained. And through that process, and I am a hard charger, so I decided I'm going to jump into this 3-day meditation, silent meditation retreat, no food. I've never missed a meal in my life, right? Like, the yoga instructor, we took our vow of silence at this retreat. And the yoga instructor, who's like 200 years old, she walks past me and she's like, I see you know how to do 100%, but you know nothing less. And so for 3 days, I had to walk around this campus, going to all the classes and all the things. And I'm like, the second we broke this, I was like, we're going to talk. We're going to sit down, okay? Because I need to. But she was so right? Like, to the extreme, of course. I'm like, I don't know how to swim, but I'll throw my hat in. But the opportunity to do less but feel more is something I've integrated with my kids. When my kids feel something, we get still, we breathe. Before school, we do mindfulness exercises, and it may be about a bee moving from flower to flower, the pollen, but it gives them tools when they can associate an emotion or a feeling that overwhelms them to then pause. And hopefully, right, with these tools, you become a conscious responder rather than that unconscious reactor. As a spouse, as a dad, as a boss, as a whoever, right, you're engaging with people, and that's that hope-dealing opportunity that we have if we can work from the place that you're saying, which is that conscious responsibility of, taking some ownership of how you feel and recognizing where you put your attention and focus, that expands.
So this integration piece is awesome because we're seeing firsthand accounts here that, again, nobody up here is perfect, and we're far from it, and we're all works in progress. And you've done such a great job of integrating your pain and your trauma and the things that you've done and the tools that you've picked up along the way, these arrows in your quiver, so to speak, to then implement that into your pool of population and the people that you're serving and the people that you're helping. I sense all this evolution that's happened, right? as not just human beings too, but then saying, I want to take the next step and I want to share that with people. How important is it that we do this, where we integrate what we've learned? We are like our own lab experiments, and then we experiment on ourselves and we don't die, and then we can live to tell and help folks about it. Paige, you and I had a conversation about mentorship, or at least having this kind of connection, right? Like as soon as you learn something from somebody else that's a little bit further in their journey than you, your goal should be, I need to pass it right back to somebody else, right? So talk a little bit about your evolution too as a coach of, training 25 classes a week to where you are now, where again, dare I say, you're training less but being more effective because of that stillness, even as a practitioner or as someone that's instructing classes.
So I've been in the industry now for 8 or 9 years, which I'm so honored to say. It's like been the best chapter of my life by far. When I was in my young 20s and I started this, I just felt like a sponge, right? Like all of these more senior coaches, studio owners around me, I just wanted to seep in everything that they knew. And even at age 30, of course, I'll never arrive. But what I have learned from the mentors above me that I get to now pass on to mentees below me or in line with me has felt like my greatest purpose, because our testimonies then are the gateway to other people learning. And so with this cycle, always having somebody above you or pouring into you, and then always having somebody that you're pouring into is like making you the richest person. And I can say, like, right here, they pour into me, Dean, you pour into me, but then the fact that we get to pour back out is why we do all of it.
Yeah, and I think having that mentor-mentee relationship is interesting, because there traditionally is always this, Grey's Anatomy kind of like, I'm the chief resident, you're the peon, and, so forth. And there was always this comment in medical school that said, what's the difference between dog poop and a fourth-year medical student? Well, people go out of their way to not step on dog poop. So it's like, oh, wow. So that's like the traditional mentality of what it's like to be in that mentorship relationship, which what I hear you guys saying is it's more kind of like if you're going to climb Mount Everest and you get a Sherpa, right? They're not doing it for you. They're just helping carry some of your load. You might be a very seasoned climber, and that Sherpa just needs to carry a small load for you. Or this might be your first time up the mountain, and they're carrying a little bit more for you. But you still have to take the steps to actually get to the summit. And I think that's really important, because I think if we look at that from a perspective of all of us up here, we're really just helping Sherpa some of the things that we do for you guys, where if it's a different goal, if it's a physical goal, a mental goal, a spiritual goal, a soulful goal, we're here to help carry some of that load, but we're still not here to do it for someone. That's still something that has to be done by the individual, right?
Yeah, and Sherpa, I also feel like this has dropped into my life a lot in the past, even few weeks, months, but we're just channelers. Like, we just get to be open channels. I don't necessarily want people following in my exact footsteps. I just want to be here to channel their greatest version of what's inside of them. And I'm like, man, if I can just stay open as a channel, they're going to learn what they need to learn through me. And I think that's one of the coolest things about what we get to do as leaders, is just be open.
What Dean and Paige have said, we are not alone. And I think that is the greatest gift I've learned through entrepreneurship and just age and time and giving myself grace through vulnerability. You find mentorship, you find opportunities to be a mentee, and you have people. Like we tell ourselves in our darkest times to isolate, and that's not what we're meant to do. You're really meant to connect, and it becomes effortless. And it's such a beautiful thing that, like, because you're not an instructor doesn't mean you can't be a teacher. One-on-one, you're teaching, you're learning, you're pouring in, and it's always from that overflowing cup, which is why mind, body, soul, you're like, you got to pour into you so it can overflow and it doesn't feel so hard to give to others. And like she said, it's so effortless and it's so rewarding, and it's the richest thing that you're like, I don't want you to suffer when I know, like, man, just don't do it that way. But if you want to do it that way, I still support you and I'm going to motivate you through it. But we are not here alone. In this space, seeing all of us collectively, you know, you're not alone. And I think that's the biggest thing I want to remind people is like, help is a prayer. It is the most powerful HELP period. The universe, God, everyone, the forces will come to help you. And it will all conspire in your favor in something so positive. Negativity doesn't live in that word. Like nothing ugly lives there. So, sorry. My soul is like, oh, yes.
I'm about to get up. Whew. Dave, you got something?
That just hit me. That just hit me good. I think the permission in my own life, I don't want to speak to anybody else's inner child here. Yeah, you didn't know the NFL guy was going to be talking about inner child work today.
He's done Zumba, so we're good.
Yeah, you know all the things about me now. But what you just said struck me because I'm like, look, if I think about how I would coach a team of 10-year-old kids, right, my kids, or like, I'm not going to coach them the way that I talk to my little self. Pause, right? Boom, stop, hard stop. Like, that's the difference. And so to that same point, it's like when I see that there's a different way to approach the conversation with myself and the slave driver mentality no longer works, then there's this opportunity to heal. And I think that that's when you're paying it forward to somebody or passing it on, helping them avoid a similar scar maybe. That's the opportunity too to love yourself and integrate parts that maybe you couldn't have seen until you did this act. And that's that full circle part where you start to realize that, like, oh man, this is going to change. That perspective I've gained, I'm responsible for the changes that I need to make in my life. I need to become a better total person.
Now we're going.
They pretty awesome, right? Y'all agree? Yes. Hey, so I shared with Dean and Emily and Paige a conversation I had with my mentor. Who are you? Where are you? Why are you? See, the society now tells us that being an influencer is the way to go. I don't want to argue about it, yes? Being an influencer. I typically say this, when there's a level of personal accountability and your understanding of who you are, where you are, and why you are, then it doesn't come about the influence. It's the impact that I know that my position has presence. It has power. It has the ability to inspire and evoke change in people. And that my excuses are not good enough because people see something in me that I have to accept and understand about myself. So once you understand how impactful your presence can be, then it's really not about you really hiding behind that mode of victim mentality. It's you seeking opportunities to be a victim. And it may be just believing past stopping. That's one step further. So everybody's process is a little different. And I just encourage you as you're along that process in the journey of being nice and being gentle to yourself and speaking to that inner person and stopping when you need to breathe and understanding that Zumba is a good thing. All right. Like there's something that is requiring of you to understand that your position is one of power and that your purpose and your position, you have to understand who you are, why you are, and where you are in your life.
Wow. That's awesome. We're going to open it up for some questions. That was, man, real quick round of applause for these guys. That was awesome. We would love to hear some questions from you guys. In the sake of time, I can see the sun coming up over NorthPark Center, so I know there's going to be frenzied shoppers real quick. You don't mess around at NorthPark. I'm just telling you that.
Mall walkers are here.
This ain't the Galleria, you know what I mean? Sorry. It's the truth. Nobody goes there. Cut that out. Any questions from the audience? We can probably take 2 or 3. Yes. You see that black X right there? That's right. Yep, we had to set up. Here we go. I'm coming to you. Yeah, I'm bringing the mic. It's like Jimmy Kimmel.
So,
Name it, please, first. Yeah, introduce yourself.
my name is Paloma. This has been so special to hear you guys speak and like just be in the room of people where we get to be listeners and like experience. This is so sweet. I love you. So I have a question because I think what's really powerful and important is to kind of learn what was the catalyst for change in a person's life, because the people that you're speaking to, even us, even from like a healed perspective, we can always remember what was that thing that was the trajectory for change. And so I would love to kind of learn, I know that you said for the sake of time, and I don't want to be the only question, but I would love to learn what that was from you guys, for you guys in your life. I know you kind of spoke about it specifically, but I think it would just be special to share, if you guys wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so what was that point, that catalyst point? Was there a point, was there a period of time? Can you share with us?
So mine personally was my brother's suicide 8 years ago. It was such a sadness, but his life, and I'll say to this day, saved my life because I found an inner peace, and it made me realize, like, you don't have time to pretend to live anymore. You live in the now and enjoy that and work on yourself. Like, that was the biggest thing. I was like, oh, healing begins now. And I stopped being afraid to cry and be sad. And I just, like, it was such an overwhelming experience that I was like a little bit weirded out, that I was like, God is here. The universe is really here telling me something. And I always thank my brother, Daniel Kirk, and I will say his name every single day, just to, like, your life matters. And that healing journey that 7-8 years ago I embarked on became the work that I do and the work that I love. So it's from such a personal space. Thank you for that question. But that's my why. I was like,
Great
Jazz,
question.
choose you and do it now.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, so as a 10-year-old boy, I was sexually abused by the neighbor next to me, older boy, who I wanted validation from. And it really, I shoved that down for 2 decades. I suppressed and repressed that so deeply because it was, I was confused. I felt broken. I think a whole lot of the way that I serve people now comes from that wound. But it wasn't until I was actually in rehab that stuff came up. And at first it was like, acknowledge it, be free from it. Oh, I'm good. And then there was like years of work. And I say this, it's not in spite of that I've achieved what I've, but it's because of that. Like, I promise I would not have had the drive. I guarantee you I wouldn't have made it to the NFL had that not occurred. Because remember, the origin of the hero and the villain is the same. Depends on what trajectory you take from that. And so that scar ultimately, and again, and I know part of that identity crisis in leaving football and stuffing my face with opiates was attributed to a lot of that initial wound. And I'm so grateful today, again, not the gift I wanted, but grateful for that wound as a result of me being able to share that truth, and so many others be like, man, I've experienced something similar. Or even if they hadn't, maybe at some point they, struggle with addiction. And so many of the people that I serve, I wouldn't have the ability to wade into the water with them and to express that, like, your worth has never changed. And in fact, until you can recognize your worthiness, you're going to keep doing this. And I'll be here for it. Like, I'm totally down to get my feet wet too, and I'll paddle. But I want better for you. And so that's why I think those are kind of two, both the drug addiction side and that abuse as a child, that I'm incredibly grateful for today. And it's with that I find that the wound is healed, is through that gratitude, which is big for me.
Wow. I mean, that's one of those, man, thank you guys, you two, for sharing that. That is, some very personal stuff, very deep stuff. But, I think a lot of times people say, hey, if you could change something in your past, what would it be? And my response is always nothing, because what you guys just shared was your past has fortified your character and your resolve to be the person that you are. So if you were to go back and erase that, you wouldn't have actually taken that pain and turned it into so much purpose, right? And so, yeah, thank you guys for sharing. That's very personal. Any other questions? All right. Okay, here we go. Get up here. Can I get an apple box over here? Okay. State your name, sir.
I'm Rashawn McCaleb. Thanks so much for being here. I got a question for the ex-athletes, the ex-collegiate athletes, and Antoine, you can answer this too. You talked about it specifically when you said, "Who are you? Where are you? And why are you?" That kind of hit me hard because I know you stated too.
Which one?
David, right?
David, yes.
just coming out of college, and you stated it too, just finding who you are, where you are outside of the sports, outside of the athletic zone, just finding out, hey, who am I as a person? Who am I to the kingdom? Who am I just to the world, to serve? And just, aside from being an athlete, that's the easy part, being institutionalized in that. But I just want to go into deeper conversation about that, and maybe you can help me find who I am, or give me steps to, get to who I am, where I am, and again, like you said, why am I? Yeah.
Looks like y'all got a coffee date pretty soon, Antoine.
He right down the street.
Next Wednesday.
He right down the street. Please reach out to me, man. I would love to talk to you. So for me, service is my safe space. Fitness is easy, but the ability to serve is my safe space. And my grandmother always said, if you take care of people, watch how God provides. So it's what I desire to do. So I say to you, once you have an understanding, so I didn't, fortunately enough, I learned in 10th grade that I wasn't going to be as tall as nothing, right? So I knew that sports wasn't my thing. So, but I say that to say this. They accomplished something. He went to the NFL. He played collegiate sports. That became their identity. Right? That was what they devoted their time, energy, and effort to, their identity, that part of it. And they accomplished great things in that process. For me personally, I wanted to be a husband and a father to my kids because that's something that I despised of my father, who I didn't know. So my process of healing happened when I went through my divorce. I now went through this identity crisis of saying, like, wait, everything that I desired to be, or was my identity that I wanted to accomplish, is now gone. I'm a failure. And I wrote this down, and I talked to some of the guys years ago, and I said, I never fail. I find different solutions to learn and progress forward. I don't fail. I find answers to be better. And Jazz spoke earlier about isolation and solitude. If you do the research on those, those are two different places to be, right? Isolation is you setting yourself apart from betterment, I'll say it like that. Loneliness is you having to deal with self. It puts you in a position to say, all right, how do I improve or better myself in this space that I'm in? So knowing who you are, where you are, and why you are just ways for you to kind of tap into you and say, all right, what do I need to improve? Who do I desire to be? And what do those actionable steps look like? And simplify. 1% is great. Just do 1% and be consistent with that 1%.
Wow, he's a walking proverb, really. We got time for one more question. Oh man, sorry. God, everybody's so tall, man. LeBron, freaking.
Hey, my name's Zach. Questions for DV and anyone else who wants to answer. Sounds like you've been through a few challenges in your life. So with all the lessons you've learned from those, how do you now prepare yourself to face big challenges? And how do you best prepare others to face their challenges?
I'll be quick on that one. I got it tattooed, which is kind of ironic because everything is temporary. It's tattooed on my wrist, except for this tattoo, which suddenly sticks around. No, I think there's a part of experiencing difficult things that equips you to recognize, back to the flea analogy or otherwise, right? That you're elevating the ceiling of your threshold. And I think we all have some deep-seated unsettling or fear that is, but do I have enough to face the next thing, right? Like if this is a progression like a video game and the next boss has all of what the last boss has and some more, do I have the cheat code, And I think that what I've recognized is that there's not a silver bullet, but doing the things that we've talked about up here equips you with the perspective and the tools to enlist with whatever that boss looks like. And I think that, usually if I looked at the gifts or the attributes that I would normally reach for, those aren't going to usher me into this next level. And so it's about trying and challenging yourself with tools, being okay at looking really bad or stupid at something to get good at it. And again, maybe it's not even good. Maybe it's just more effective for what's to come. And recognizing that every storm runs out of rain. There's not one finite thing that will continue on forever. It's all temporary. And so, that's why going alone sucks, and being a part of a tribe or a collective is so much more important.
Man, collective is who I am and why I am. So I'm mic dropping. That was great, David.
I don't think you can really prepare for the challenges. I think that, and life has just taught me that I don't want to sit around thinking the worst case scenario to play it out, because I still won't be prepared for it. Like, nothing can prepare you for whatever that's to come, but you have your foundation set that you don't have to keep going back to rebuild that. You at least have those things to be like, okay, this happens, I'll get through it. And you say that from a space the first day, like, I'll get through this. And then each day it's like, I'll get through this. I'm gonna get through this. And then it's like, but you have that foundation. So I got to tell myself I can't prepare for it, because every time life throws a blow that I'm like, that really hurt. That really, really hurts.
No, I love it. Well, thank you guys so much, seriously, for attending this pilot episode. I hope this is not the last time we get to do this. This has been such an incredible treat. We really could go on for hours. We're going to run out of film, first of all. And then, obviously the mall walkers are going to start storming this place. But on a real note, we encourage you guys to take away from this. You can do this. Grab a few friends, get some coffee, go have a meal together, invite people to your home, and have your own roundtable discussion about these things. Because I think the more we can do this on a microcosmal level versus, it doesn't always have to be a production, right? But if you find one other person and have a deep, meaningful conversation about these topics, that's going to help everybody change the mindset. We can't do it on a big scale all the time, but you guys absolutely have the power to do this on your own. And so that's what we encourage you guys. This idea was birthed out of just a ton of conversations. I've had so many deep, meaningful conversations with each of these folks, and I was like, hey, let's just do it all together. And then let's put up a bunch of lights and cameras, okay? So, but you can absolutely do this as well, and we encourage you guys to do this. Again, please take those cards, whatever notes you have, share those with friends and family, and we thank you so much. Thank you, panelists, for doing this with us. Thank you, Lululemon, for hosting. We appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next video. Thank you. And let's cut. Great job.